Testable explanations will mean the relationship between cause, context, and consequences. It is that in several cases of clinical success and claims in the Siddha system, testable explanations have not been established, and this fact rolls the system itself into a mesh of myth and legend. Lack of repeatability questions the primary clinical success, and lack of testable explanation causes a lot of chaos and incredibility in the minds of the people. The clinical success is itself suspected many times, and even if it is accepted, the question as to whether the success was consequential to the Siddha modality or was by chance or any other parallel process that would have been involved in the treatment of the patient. Under such circumstances, it is mandatory for Siddha research to be kindled. Next slide. Rekindled and sustained. When I say kindled, it is the initial motivation to do research. When I say rekindled and sustained, the continuous perseverance of proceeding into various kinds of research in the system. More emphasis on appropriate research is required, and better understanding of the cause-effect relationship of the system is also needed. So what now I would do is to just chalk out a kind of a skeletal plan which may be of help in deciding translational research in Siddha. Next slide. Now, research into the applicability of the entire system and practice. Now, I'm trying to make it into different components. Principles to be followed. 1. The first principle that should be followed in defining translational research here would be to have research into the applicability of the entire system and practice. All of us know, and you know much better than me, that this system is based on the balance between Vadam, Pittam, and Kapam. Of course, Ayurveda also has a similar trihumeral physiology, but then the trihumeral emphasis is more in Siddha, I would say. And the system very clearly says disturbances in this balance lead to disorders and diseases. You would have been studying that right throughout. Very many related and unrelated factors cause disturbance in the balance between these three. And these factors can be anything. These factors can range from one corner of the world to the other corner. Next slide. Weather, climate, close environment, far environment, active lifestyle, sedentary lifestyle, food, diet, mental status, use of technology, impact of technology, tendencies of an individual are all factors that can tilt the balance between these three. It is true that very many times we say disturbance here leads to some kind of a disorder, and pathogenesis of several diseases depend on these disturbances. However, there is a small little thing that many people have forgotten. It is not very clear if the relationship between these factors and the tripartite balance of Vadam, Pittam, and Kapam have been adequately quantified. There is a very clear statement that there is disturbance will lead to disease, but then how much of disturbance? what is the proportion of each, what kind of a balance or what kind of an imbalance would lead to what kind of a disease phenomenon. That needs to be validated in the laboratory and quantified in the community. It is also not clear if the factor of humoral imbalance is accurately established in various diseases and their pathogenesis. Many of you would have read the pathogenesis of a particular disease itself is multifactorial. When that is multifactorial and tripartite imbalance is also multifactorial, you can understand the permutation combination would vary to create various levels of disorders. And my friends, please remember, science demands clarity and clarity demands testable explanation. Next slide. There is yet another area which is exclusive of the Siddha system, but I am not very sure how many Siddha practitioners profess appropriate wisdom in this. What you call as Envagai Therivu. Envagai Therivu is the mainstay in the diagnosis of diseases in the Siddha system. Yes, it is recorded, it is documented, it is being talked of, it is hailed, but then in practice, how much of appropriate wisdom is really professed and practiced? It is necessary that a clear-cut norm should be established in the use and practice of Envagai Therivu. The reason why I put one example here in the illustration, there are 8 of them, and I've just shown only one of them, the Nadi. The reason, some of my colleagues may remember, very often some of these practices and some of these concepts are being made mockery in the social and the visual media. Seniors here may remember several movies make a mockery of the Nadi system. Why so? If only we had validated and quantified the components of Envagai Therivu, such kind of mockery could have been avoided. Most of Siddha medicine is today taught, next slide, and practiced with principles of other systems of medicine, especially with those of the allopathic system. Integrated system has its own advantages. I don't deny the fact. In fact, we are at that stage of history that today the world over we have started saying if one particular system does not give you relief, if some other system is going to give you a relief, there is nothing wrong in using both the systems together or more systems together. It is only the object that needs to be fulfilled. So practice of integrated system of medicine where there is some bit of Siddha and some bit of allopathy and probably some bit of some other system may be used. This integrated approach has its own advantages. Nevertheless, when it comes to quantification, statistics and success indicators from integrated practice will not provide adequate clarity. When there is a success in clinical practice, we will not know if that success can be attributed to which component of the integrated practice that it relates to. It is therefore the duty of the senior members of the system to channelize efforts towards core research in Siddha. Next slide. Such core research should be carried out to establish the relationship between various factors of influence like climate, diet, and stress, and the tripartite humoral basis. This relationship should be clearly recorded and validated under repetitive circumstances. The relationship should be validated in the newer and emerging diseases too. Some diseases are new. Those diseases were not there when Agatyar or any other Siddhar was practicing. It is necessary that we establish the relationship between the environmental factors and the same relationship should also be recorded and documented in terms of cross-influence of factors and the existence of various permutation combination of them. The clear boundaries and functionality of Envagai Therivu, whether changes in the individual and the environment in the past 2 or 3 millennia could have changed some of the principles of Envagai Therivu. I say this because when the ancient practitioners recorded Nadi and said they were able to read features of the disorder from the Nadi, I'm not very sure if the same can be done today, given the kind of pollution, given the kind of various punitive contributions that have happened in the society. The second step, next slide, or the second principle to be followed would be researching into the treatment modalities of the Siddha system. It is indeed joyous to learn that several agencies now are embarking on projects of Siddha research. However, once again, it is not very clear if these projects have been piloted and standardized. It is mandatory that research into even fundamental principles of practice should be standardized and should be piloted. Though a few pharmaceutical agencies and organizations are involved in Siddha research, I stand corrected. If there could be more agencies involved, I would only be happy. But then, as I understand, it's only a very few agencies which are involved in such research. Formulations are being tested more than clinical trials being conducted. Of course, there are standardization laboratories. The Ministry of Ayush has established several standardization laboratories, and these laboratories are working at different corners of the country, no doubt. Though drug standardization is required on one side and would keep us in a very good stead, it is necessary that more and more of therapeutic preparations are validated with appropriate clinical trials. There can be different and varying modalities of treatment. When I say modalities, it is not only the drug preparation that I mean, but then several other things, several other techniques of treatment that go along with drug preparations. You may give a drug, you may not give a drug. Administering drug alone is not part of management. But it is essential to validate each of these modalities individually. Say, for example, if you use a non-invasive method, something like Varmam or something, it is very, very essential to validate each of these modalities individually, separately, and in combination. Next slide. So that is what it is. Every modality needs to be validated. As combination of modalities of different systems can influence or attenuate their own efficacies, combination of modalities of the Siddha system can also do so. The third principle, next slide. The third principle that I would advocate is to have research involving approved and authentic methods. This is an area of lacuna that has been noted by several experts and reported. Appropriate pilot studies are not often conducted in Siddha research. Procedures of protocol including informed consent and inclusion criteria are to be followed meticulously. We would have to remember that we are in an age of consumerism, and any medical expert is subject to the process of litigation. Pilot studies and review of literature are absolute elements in systematic research protocol and should be given their due importance. When a project is attempted without a proper pilot study, what happens? And that is what it states there. There is no appropriate review of existing literature. There is no proper pilot study. You have a twofold danger. One is you waste the resources. You start a project without a proper pilot study, just like that, embark on something. Halfway through or a little after halfway, you suddenly realize your study is leading you nowhere. You don't get a proper result. Then you drop the study just like that. All the resources that you have spent on the study, on the project, is lost. When I say resources, I do not mean the money part of it alone. It is your own time, your own energy, your efforts, which are all part of the resources. And there is yet another danger, which I would say is much more dangerous than wastage of resources. This happens to everyone. I start a study, and then suddenly I find myself landing nowhere. I've just like that started impulsively. What happens is many of us would want to save the grace and try giving false information. Just because I want to save the study, I start falsifying. This leads to a lot of falsification, false results. There is a kind of a constrictive pressure on the researcher. So this kind of a double-fold damage can be avoided if only proper pilot studies are planned. Pilot studies would help translating Siddha research into Siddha practice. In addition, it is also necessary that research is focused. All of us would agree that not only drugs but diseases also have a wide range of functionality. It is therefore important that when a project is attempted, the study focuses on the type of disease, the chronicity of the disease, the stage of the disease, the age range of the study population, the environment of the study population, and so on. Let me take a very, very common example. This example is not only exclusive of Siddha, but then this is an example I am taking common for any system of medicine so that we understand what it means to focus in research. If a study is attempted on diabetes, let's say we're trying to study about a particular formulation, a particular drug or a particular compound. Let's call that compound X. Compound X and its efficacy in the treatment of diabetes. Don't be very non-specific like that. The specificity will have to be whether it is type 1 diabetes that you're trying to work on or type 2. So the type of disease is important. And even there, it is just not enough if you say someone who is afflicted with type 2, I'll start doing this work. No. You would have to specify the number of years by which the individual had been afflicted. You can say someone who has had 10 years, 1 decade of the disease, or 5 years of the disease, or a short term or a long term, something to restrict the area and focus the area of research. Similarly, the average range of blood sugar that the individual has had for the last 5 years, that would once again focus your research better. You would find when you try focusing this kind of research, the study population, of course, will get restricted. But then the study population will also be guided by clearly defined parameters, and your study itself will be fortified by details of focus. The next principle would be, next slide. Now this is just to give you the importance of the pilot study, the various factors of pilot study which we have already discussed. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, the next principle will be research into special areas of the Siddha system itself. The Siddha system has several areas of special interest, we all know. So when someone chooses an area for research, they can be channelized to choose such special areas. One such example will be the Varmam area, which remains largely unexplored until now. The research potential is very high. Similarly, specific medication and extracts which have been recorded in Siddha literature also need a special impetus as far as research into their efficiency and efficacies are concerned. Specific extracts or specific substances, specific chemicals can be studied. Now once again I'll quote an example, but I will not go into a very specific individual substance, but then I'll take a common plant which has been claimed to be giving a lot of success in different parts of the world, not only the Indian system, but then several other systems across the globe have been claiming efficiency with this plant. But also try and see how much of lacuna remains in that one plant itself. The plant that I am referring to is the aloe vera. Many of you are aware of the positive effects of aloe vera. The aloe vera plant and its various parts have been claimed to be used in several dermatologic, cosmetic and other conditions. However, the standardization of these various components and the validation of their uses have not yet been clearly demarcated at all. You would know there is a gel portion and then there is a latex portion. How much of work has gone into the latex portion? In common practice, most of us use, even the household people, leave alone Siddha practitioners, leave alone qualified practitioners. The household folk use the gel, but then so much remains in the latex portion, and it is our responsibility to do some validated research into that area. In some of the recent studies, the aloe vera gel has been found to be according protection and healing in radiation dermatitis. In several countries, post-cancer radiation, radiotherapy, radiation dermatitis, and people are using the aloe vera gel for according protection in radiation dermatitis. However, the exact mechanism is yet to be completely defined. The application of the aloe gel seems to generate an antioxidant material called the metallothionein in the skin. They say it is the skin that generates the metallothionein, and not much of work has gone into it at all. Similarly, antiviral and anti-cancer properties have also been reported in the use of aloe gel. But it has been found that the anti-cancer property comes more from the anthraquinones, and the anthraquinones are more in the latex portion and not in the gel portion. Same way, some studies have also indicated prolonged use of oral aloe vera is supposed to be causing colorectal cancer. Now that is where the paradox comes. On one side, we say the anthraquinones do have anti-cancer properties. On the other side, it is stated use of oral aloe gel causes colorectal cancer. So where is the paradox, or where is the gap in translational research? It is also thought that the anthraquinones produce anti-allergic material, the same anthraquinones are also supposed to be producing allergic reactions. And to add probably an advantage to us, alprogen, which is the anti-allergic chemical found in the gel portion, that has anti-allergic properties. So how much of gel and how much of latex, what is the proportion or what kind of combination is all an area which remains unconquered. We can therefore see there are varying propositions and varying information in one single plant that most of us are aware of. Instead of merely stating aloe vera is good, it is necessary to validate and quantify the efficacy of each of these components and put them into appropriate use. The next principle, next slide, will be research into unexplored areas. It is for all of us to understand that there are several areas of virgin potential in the system. I am not an expert in the system to pinpoint the areas of virgin potential, but I am sure the senior experts here would have several areas under their sleeve in such phenomenal numbers. Senior experts and enthusiastic youngsters can join hands in research into these areas. Plant extracts. I do hear a lot of people in Tamil Nadu, in different parts of Tamil Nadu, have been working on several plant extracts. In the Western world, the way research is quantified, especially research into tribal medicine is quantified, is by trying to get hold of the tribal plants or get hold of the plants that the tribal people point to, try and take the extracts and validate those extracts. I'm sure in the Siddha system also there could be some plants which have not been hitherto conquered, and such areas can be thought of for both pilot and full-blown projects. Next slide, please. The next one will be research into aspects of personalized medical practice. Friends, when I started with a kind of a comparison between science and medicine. When I tried and drew a comparison, I told you there is an element of repetition and an element of repeatability in both science and medicine. This element of repeatability in medicine leads us to a preclusion that whenever signs and symptoms are the same, the drugs used can also be same. But believe me, one disease, one drug, or one drug for one disease is more of an allopathic concept. It is not a concept completely accepted in the Siddha system. Researchers in Siddha can try to crystallize on the Siddha concept of personalized and customized attention. If you go through Siddha literature, you will find that many of the native and ancient Siddha practitioners mixed their formulations to suit each individual patient. Why did they do so? Was it that they did not possess facilities of mass production? Today you and me have technology at hand. We can build a big factory where there is mass production of the drugs and the formulations. Was it that the ancient practitioners did not have facilities of mass production, or was it that they specifically varied the formulation according to the demands of the individual condition? It could be the same disease, but nevertheless, the impact of the disease or the impact of the disorder on an individual could vary because of various factors. Of course, in practice, we do vary the amount of the drug or the amount of the biocompatible portion of the drug or the dosage of the drug. However, I very strongly believe that in the Siddha system, the ancient Siddha practitioners had something to do when they formulated customized formulations for their patients. If the latter was the case, further research into such aspects is mandatory to consolidate success. All the aforementioned points, the various principles which could channelize our efforts into translational research need to be thought of. I only thought of sharing these stray information with the experts here so that in future Siddha research could lead us into well investigated and well implemented success. Translation of any Siddha research will have to be implemented into the success of medical practice. Of course, as I conclude with these and me are scientists, as people dispose
attended with the utmost care. We do realize, madam. Certainly, we assure you that, as you said in your introductory remarks, it would be taken in right perspectives. Many components and the strengths they have spoken about. But when compared to last 2-3 decades, as of now, many areas are much promising and we have progressed a bit, especially with regard to standardization techniques and many other unique therapies like Varmam and Nadi Parikshay, etc. Madam, so kind of you. We would like to have the Director General of CCRS, Professor Dr. Kanagavalli, and Director of NIS, Dr. Meena Kumari, with us on the dais to honor the Madam. We kindly request Professor Dr. Ganapati, former Joint Director, Directorate of Indian Systems of Medicine and Homeopathy, Government of Tamil Nadu, to honor our plenary speaker, Dr. Sudha Seshain. Please, sir. We request our DG and Director with us on the dais, please. டெஃபினட்டாக இது வந்து மாணவ மணிகளுக்கு ஒரு ஐ ஓப்பனிங் செஷனாக இருந்திருக்கும். நிறைய ஸ்ட்ரெங்க் ஏரியாஸ் அவென்யூஸும் மேடம் பேசியிருக்கிறாங்க. அதையும் நீங்கள் கவனத்தில் கொள்ள வேண்டும் என்று கேட்டுக்கொள்கிறோம். She has given a lot. துணைவேந்தர் டாக்டர் சுதா சேஷையன் அவர்களுக்கு Thank you very much, madam, for your wonderful slides. You have taken great efforts to shape up your PPT for us in a fantastic way. Thank you very much, madam.